Hey, church family and friends. It's David. Happy Friday. Happy Easter. You know, that Easter story still reverberates in my mind and heart these days because I think it is speaking to us in our times. Especially when, according to John, Mary stood there weeping when she bent down to look into the tomb and saw angels. In her anguish, she looked into the tomb to confirm her despair when the truth had something else to say. Her love and salvation was not dead, but risen and would show up next to call her by name. I find this to be such an incredible story to contemplate in times like these, when our fear and frustration and anguish is being met with a different, hopeful, game-changing truth too. Speaking of which, there is so much to talk about, figure out, and live into when it comes to being church together in these increasingly hopeful times. So here are the updates. While we remain protective and committed to being an inclusive community, we nonetheless understand really well that the regional COVID news is very hopeful these days, and it makes this thing very clear. Vaccinations are what change the pandemic game. This week's updated guidance from the CDC suggesting that small groups of entirely vaccinated people who keep social distance and meet outside can even do so safely without masks. We are very well aware of this hopeful announcement, and while it doesn't apply to everything that we do, we take our cues from the CDC and are actively updating what practices are considered safe for St. Luke's to engage in. Change in our approaches, it will happen deliberately, according to those CDC guidelines and safe practices when they get updated. So thanks in advance for your patience and flexibility, and for your compassionate consideration as we figure out the right next things of those still vulnerable and not yet vaccinated. But we don't need to be afraid, because there are angels in that tomb we've been peering in with Mary, and they're wearing research badges and nursing jackets, and thanks be to God for the truth they're revealing for us. As the landscape of pandemic is changing in these hopeful ways, we're trying to prepare in the right ways for the diverse community of people that we are. And to that end, we have asked you over the last couple of weeks by survey about gathering, what you're up for, what you're comfortable with, what you hope for. So please click the link in this week's email and fill out that brief survey. It helps us immensely. We've heard from almost 150 people already, and we still would like to hear from others, but it is hopeful so far to know that we are a very significantly vaccinated congregation for those who are eligible, but with a wide variety of comfort levels when it comes to gathering in person indoors. And that's going to help us prepare to do so in the right ways for our community. We continue to prepare for 10:30 sanctuary worship to resume in June. At long last, we will be able to gather safely in this space again in worship of God. We are preparing for that reality in just a few weeks, and it will happen with the expectation that everyone here, everyone there on Sunday mornings who is eligible, age 16 and up, will be vaccinated. While that will be our expectation, it will not be guaranteed. So those who attend in-person sanctuary worship will need to keep that in mind. But masks and social distancing will, of course, be strictly required, except that families in COVID pods are welcome to sit together, as they are also in outdoor worship now. But also, you can be assured that people flow and bathroom access will be managed carefully for safekeeping. More officially about that soon, but those preparations are in the discernment and in the works. And as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it will also be our intention and is part of our preparations to offer a simple outdoor service at 9 a.m. Sounds like the community's preference. And the 10:30 sanctuary service will always and continue to be available live online. I also, speaking of online worship, have an update to share from our IT guru and leader, Steve Cashwell, and our producers of online worship. We are also preparing for a more permanent broadcast and video production solution for our online worship. And on May 16th, so that's coming up in 3 Sundays, we will be moving online worship from Facebook Live and Zoom as the points of access to YouTube. Hopefully that is a place where we are moving to that you are already facile and familiar with. But you should know that you'll still access Sunday online worship by emails, our webpage, our Facebook page, but it will be delivered to you on your device by YouTube. And you've probably already had that experience looking at special services we've offered here at St. Luke's in that way, or concerts. And so some of this will hopefully feel familiar. We recognize that all change is strenuous in one way or another, and so we want to make you aware of that necessary change coming in our online worshiping life that we will navigate in the middle of May. The times are hard, change is hard, and waiting is so frustrating. And I just want to offer that we, leading here at St. Luke's, we all feel that so deeply with each and every one of you. And so I wanted to offer that my therapist, and by the way, I hope we're all getting good, healthy counseling support these days. It's just a good thing to have built into your life anytime, especially these times. But my therapist recommended an NPR podcast recently that was really helpful for my understanding of myself and us in these times. It was a podcast of an interview Krista Tippett did on NPR with a renowned neurologist named Christine Runyon. And it's fabulous learning about ourselves, our minds, and our bodies in these pandemic times, learning that I commend to us all. The part that I want to make sure none of us miss, even with this shorthand accounting of it, is her teaching that our nervous systems are hardwired and nurtured to when encountered by a threat like COVID and pandemic adaptation. We all just naturally, we move into a fight or flight posture of self-defense, maybe with our bodies, but definitely with our nervous systems and with our minds. Her point was whether we feel it, actively know it or not, we have all gone through this biological and psychological experience during this pandemic, because we've all gone through the trauma of pandemic life and radical change because of the pandemic. And this defensive posture, she wanted to make sure we all know, wears us out. It takes lots of energy and keeps us on edge constantly. And so it can help us understand experiences like we might be having now. The times around us are lightening, but our minds and bodies are not necessarily ready to do so immediately right away because we are caught in this posture of survival. And this self-awareness is helpful. It's also helpful to be aware that this phenomenon, it's going on for you and me, and it's going on for everyone right now. It can help inform our senses of compassion as we move forward together in the way of Jesus. We are, you have probably been paying attention, we are reflecting in our worship lives on the subject of Christian love in this Easter season. I invite us to remember one of the most famous expressions of Christian love that Paul said about that active, sometimes even difficult to give kind of love that Jesus shows us in the way he lived and died and rose. Paul says, love, this kind of love that Jesus shows, is patient, love is kind, Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. With God's help, we, the St. Luke's family, will love like this too. Because after this long, hard year that has often left us in tears, like Mary's, God isn't buried, but risen and even calling to each of us by name. Alleluia. See y'all Sunday. Peace.